The Total Screen proudly presents their official podcast, On Screen, with your hosts, Tyson Gifford and William Roerig. Hello, everybody, and welcome to On Screen, the official podcast of the Total Screen. My name is Tyson.
My name is Will.
And today we are going to be talking about House of the Dragon and the Boys, as will be usual for a while now. We are also have some things to go over that are coming up on the horizon, and a few trailers to talk about in our On Beat section. Let's get started with On the Horizon. On the Horizon is where we talk about what's coming up in the next week or so. And we're starting things off with Darkest Dungeon 2, which is coming out on Monday, July 15th to PS4, PS5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X, and Switch. Then Cobra Kai is coming on Thursday, July 18th to Netflix. Kite Man Hell Yeah coming Thursday, July 18th to Max. My Spy, the Eternal City, the movie, is coming on Thursday, July 18th to Amazon Prime. We talked about that. That's the one with Dave Bautista. It's a sequel.
Yeah.
Those About to Die, which is the Gladiator one with Anthony Hopkins and Ramsay Bolton from Game of Thrones. That comes on Thursday, July 18th to Peacock. And the Nintendo World Championships NES edition comes out also on Thursday, July 18th to the Nintendo Switch. There's a Thursday ton for you, right? Mm-hmm. Cobra Kai, Kite Man, My Spy, The Eternal City, Those About to Die, and Nintendo World Championships NES edition all on a Thursday.
Jesus, yeah, that's crazy. That's nuts. Also weird, like, Nintendo apparently switched to Thursday releases.
Yeah, strange.
Randomly.
I mean, that's also like the streaming services. Most of these were putting them up on Friday. Yeah. And now a bunch of them are on Thursday. It's like, okay.
Thursday's the new Friday.
Yeah. That's when Orange is the New Black is coming out on Thursday's the new Friday.
Yeah.
Next up, we have Lady in the Lake, which is coming on Friday, July 19th to Apple TV+. This is a Apple TV+ series that stars Natalie Portman as a Jewish housewife who's investigating a black woman's murder in 1960s Baltimore.
Okay.
So, the next Apple TV+ series. And then Twisters, the sequel to Twister, is coming out on Friday, July 19th to movie theaters.
Oh, I thought that was like the sequel to Twins, but they're sisters.
Ah.
Yeah.
You're thinking of Twinsters.
Twinsters, that's it. Yeah.
That also comes out on Friday, July 19th, direct to DVD. Yeah, but that is our On the Horizon segment, and now we're going to move on to On Beat. On Beat is our news segment, and this week we only got some trailers to talk about, and we're going to be starting things off with Agatha All Along, or Agatha House of Harkness, or Agatha Keeper of Chaos, or Agatha and the Power of Grayskull, or Agatha Cordon Bleu.
Agatha Lost World.
Agatha and the Chamber of Secrets.
Yeah.
Agatha of the Dragon. I don't know. Yeah, Agatha All Along. We got our first trailer for it. We'd gotten just kind of some images before. Nothing else besides that.
This has been in development for what feels like ages since they first announced it.
Yeah, they announced this almost right after WandaVision, right?
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't like right away, but like in the same year, I think.
After right after WandaVision ended, like the last episode came out, I feel like they announced this.
Yeah, and then, so that would have been what? That was 2001, I think, so 3 years?
Yeah, 2021, yeah.
And then we also got Vision Quest was announced around, I think a little bit later than that, but like somewhere around there too, and we still haven't seen anything from that.
That's apparently still happening, but yeah, I have no clue. Yeah, I mean, it looks fine. I don't know, like, I'm not particularly excited by the concept of an Agatha TV show. Like, I love the actress. I loved her portrayal. I felt like she worked as a character in WandaVision. Mm-hmm. Like, I did end WandaVision thinking like I needed to watch a whole show about this person.
Agatha's like an interesting character in the comics, apparently.
Right.
Apparently, like at one point, she was like the nanny for the Reeds. Or not the Reeds. What's the Fantastic Four family? The Richards?
Richards, yeah.
Yeah, the Richards. For Reed Richards.
Reed is like the first name.
For his son.
Right, yeah.
She was like his nanny or something. So she's like, in the comics, she's gone from like villain to like, you know, not necessarily hero, but like on the side of the good guys. Or
right.
Well, like, I mean, she was like the legit nanny. Like, she wasn't doing anything nefarious. She was just like his nanny in Fantastic Four for a bit or something. You know, it's like, so not necessarily hero, but like on the side of heroes, I guess. So it's that's kind of that makes me a little interested in kind of like what they could draw upon. I don't think they're necessarily going to draw anything like that for this, obviously, because Fantastic Four is too big and that's not going to be out yet. So I doubt they're going to be dropping stuff related to that there, you know. But it's interesting that she has such a weird role in the comics, and you know that changes all over the place. That they can play with that a bit. It means that she doesn't necessarily have to be like a villain or a witch that's out for like you know, bad ends.
Well, let's talk about the show.
Well, yeah, so we got this trailer. We got to see she was visited by Aubrey Plaza's character, who is saying, like, you know, the witch is dead. Like, why are you still trapped in this? You gotta claw your way out. And that kind of begins, I guess, what this story is about. It's about her, like, trying to go back down some witch's road or something they reference.
It's about Agatha regaining her power, right? I mean, that's the boilerplate. One sentence pitch. And I mean, it looks fine. Like, I didn't see anything in the trailer that really got me excited to, like, watch it. I mean, it's probably be, like, decently entertaining. Catherine Hahn's gonna turn in a great performance. Mm-hmm. I'm 100% positive. It just,
Aubrey Plaza will be great. She always is.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'll probably watch it. But, like, there's nothing about this that's gotta be like, I'm anticipating it. It's like, I'll watch it when it comes out, probably.
Well, for me, this feels like this is the continuation of WandaVision in many ways. And not in every way, but in many ways. And WandaVision was by far my favorite of the MCU TV shows.
Was this like the same
probably my favorite part of it. I think it is the same showrunner. Not the same director. The director is going to be doing Fantastic Four now, but but it's the same showrunner. And yeah, I mean, certain things I've heard about it have had me a little bit excited. It's like apparently one of the characters is one of Wanda's sons, but growing up.
Yeah, you see him in the trailer.
Okay, where does that come from? Like, you know, like
right, you see him in the trailer. I don't know how it works because they weren't real in the first place.
They're continuing on like the vague idea of Wanda's death from Multiverse of Madness. You know, Aubrey Plaza being in it is interesting to me. All these things are kind of interesting to me, but none of those are new revelations from the trailer.
I want to point out that Wanda's son being in this, like a grown-up version of Wanda's son being in this, is also like another setup for Young Avengers. So they're definitely building to that.
Mm-hmm.
We saw that setup at the end of the Marvels.
Yeah.
And so like that's another setup cause he's going to be a member of that team.
Yeah. It's just, for me, the weird thing is that like everything that really has me excited about this was stuff I was excited about this well before seeing the trailer. And the trailer didn't really introduce anything new that's exciting me. Like I didn't see anything in the trailer particularly excited me. It was just kind of like, oh yeah, this is proof that the thing that I've already wanted exists. But it didn't really like do anything like new that was like, oh wow, that was really cool, or like it was just kind of like, okay. So I kind of get where you're coming from, just in the fact that nothing in the trailer is really all that exciting. But I'm still interested in seeing it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so that's Agatha All Along. Next, we got trailer for Gladiator II, which similar vibes for me in the sense that like, but I think even worse in the sense that I didn't really feel that we needed a sequel to Gladiator, but I knew it was coming. I knew Ridley Scott was still doing it. I knew Pedro Pascal was in it. I knew like all these details about it I knew kind of had me interested in it. And the trailer kind of did the opposite. The trailer kind of made me like not interested in it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It was like, I watched the trailer and I think maybe it was just like the music. The fact that they put in all this like modern music into the trailer and it just fucked the tone up for me. Like the tone just didn't play out correctly.
Yeah, the music seemed to be like, whatever.
It just took me out of it. And then like, I don't know, like the trying to like play into the events of the original one, like, you know, that it's a will that continues on or something. I'm like, it just felt very disingenuous to me. And I don't know. It's like, I was really interested in this movie, despite the fact that I didn't think Gladiator needed a sequel at all in any way, but I was still interested in the movie. And then after seeing this, I'm like, kind of, I'll probably still watch it, but I don't think it was a very good trailer.
It's just like the most unnecessary sequel.
Yeah.
Ever. I don't know. I thought it looked fine. I thought it looks alright. Again, like, yeah, there's like a part of me that's like, yeah, Gladiator 2.
Nothing sold me that this is necessary.
Yeah.
In this trailer. It's like the same thing, like I said, we were talking about the Agatha All Along trailer, and I said, everything that excited me about Agatha All Along, I already knew before the trailer, and the trailer didn't add anything that, like, added to my excitement.
Right.
It's not that I'm already excitement. It's a little different here. Like, it's, with back to Agatha All Along, though, it's like, it's not that my excitement was at peak levels. It's like, I wish the trailer had done something to excite me even more with Agatha All Along. With Gladiator 2, it's almost like the reverse effect in that I wasn't completely sold on Gladiator 2, but I was encouraged about some of the details I heard about it. And then I saw the trailer and it like reversed my hype. Like it kind of went in a negative direction. It's just like, I'm like, okay, I needed the trailer to prove the reason for this movie to exist to me, and it didn't at all.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I was like being that demanding. It did change my opinion on a Gladiator 2 one way or the other. I was like, oh, all right.
I think I was just more hopeful. You know, it's like,
yeah, I did have expectations.
I didn't need a Gladiator 2. I wasn't interested in having a Gladiator 2, but just the people involved kind of had me a little bit interested. And then I saw the trailer and I was like, okay, I'm back to where I was before I heard who was involved.
Right.
Where I'm just like, it'll probably be okay, but I'm not like, nothing's really interesting about it to me. So I don't know, kind of anticlimactic first two trailers there for us.
I'm just neutral. I'm neutral on both of them, to be honest.
Next, we got a trailer for Time Bandits, which is, I believe this is Apple TV Plus, right?
Yes, this was Apple TV Plus. Lisa Kudrow starring in this. Lisa Kudrow is always fantastic. Taika Waititi is
running the show, I think.
Is he actually the showrunner? Or like, is he the producer?
He's heavily involved. He's in it and he's heavily involved. It might be like Our Flag Means Death, where he's not the showrunner, but he's like heavily involved as a producer.
Right, yeah.
I'm not 100% sure on that.
I'm not 100% sure, but you're gonna have to walk me through this, because I've never seen Time Bandits. I've heard of it. I mean, I've seen the film's like poster, box art.
You should watch the movie for sure.
Yeah, I've never seen it. It's one of those things like I've wanted to see, because I was curious about it, but I just like never got to a point of like me watching it. So
it's Terry Gilliam who did like the Monty Python movies.
Yes.
And he also did.
Well, he was a member of the Monty Python troupe,
yeah.
So.
And he did 12 Monkeys.
Another thing I never saw.
You've heard of it though, right? You've heard.
Yeah, I know what 12 Monkeys is, yes.
Yeah. Terry Gilliam, like, fantastic visionary director, very weird, as you'd expect from somebody from Python. And Time Bandits is like kind of my first experience with Gilliam. It's like I saw that as a kid and I just remember it's so weird. Like it's about like time travel. It's like there's these portals that are being used for time travel and they're kind of all over and the characters are like this group of bandits that are like going through time and stuff. Except it's not just time. It's like time, but then they'll end up like on a boat in the ocean and all of a sudden the boat will lift off of the ocean and it's like on the head of like a giant who's just like surfacing out of the ocean, just walking out of the ocean or something. And it's like, wait a minute, this didn't happen in our history. So it's kind of like time travel if like, I guess the era of mythology really existed.
Right, yeah.
And so it's got those kind of elements to it as well. And so it's just kind of fantastical and weird. And there's like, elements of like heaven and hell and, Tartarus and all this kind of like mythological elements to it as well, besides just the time travel stuff. And it's just very weird and interesting. And it's just this kid and he, is unhappy with his family and he ends up going along with this accidentally stumbling into this situation with these time bandits that are literally people like stealing stuff from different time periods. And he just gets like caught up in their crew and they become kind of like a found family for him. And then it just goes through that. And it's been a while since I've seen it, so I'm trying to remember certain details of the movie, and they're a little bit vague for me, but I remember like certain scenes pretty distinctly. But it's just, a lot of it's just in the fact that it's Terry Gilliam and it's got that like tone. And watching the trailer, like I can see some of that. Like there's some of those scenes in it that directly recall scenes that happened in the movie that are kind of like in my head. There's like a scene where they're like running towards a wall and the wall keeps stretching outward in the movie. And in the trailer, there's like something similar to that that's happening in one scene.
So there's like, so you say like there's like a lot of callbacks to the movies in this trailer?
Yeah. Like I said, it's been a long, long time since I've seen Time Bandits. So but there's things that are like kind of in my memory, you know, like imagine if you hadn't seen Back to the Future in like 30 years, but you still remember like little bits and stuff. You still remember him like playing guitar and looking at his hand as it's like fading out. And you know what I mean? Like you remember certain scenes and stuff, even if it's been a while. And, that's kind of where I am with Time Bandits, is like I remember certain scenes, but I don't remember like the full plot and everything else that happened in it. Cause I was a kid when I watched it, and I haven't watched it since. Like it was a long time ago. But yeah, I think it looks interesting. I think it's an interesting project for Taika Waititi to be involved in. I think the sense of humor is a good match for him, you know, cause he's kind of an absurdist, and, you know, Terry Gilliam's an absurdist as well. So it's like a good match in that sense. But yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. I think you should see the Time Bandits movie, though, at some point before you watch the series.
Okay.
And I should rewatch it. Maybe we should do that on the show. I don't know.
Maybe.
Maybe we'll do a Time Bandits.
Keep that in our back pocket for a lean week. Yeah.
And then the last trailer we got, if we can even call it a trailer, it's like 15 seconds long. Nintendo finally showed us their Switch successor. And that Switch successor is a man in a trench coat with a mask over his face with a smile painted on it that sits in the corner of your room and stares at you.
Yeah.
It's wait fantastic. To play the new Metroid on that.
Yeah. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be great. Smiling man. No, this is obviously for a new game. It's weird because, like, this is, like, very un-Nintendo.
Yeah. We really don't know any details about this. Like, Nintendo posted this 15-second trailer. It's called Emio, which means, like, smiling man, I think, in Japanese.
Yeah. And by the way, this isn't just, like, some weird thing Nintendo posted on their Japanese site. This was posted by all of Nintendo's socials worldwide at the same time.
Yeah, with no other details. Like, it just said, like, who is Emio?
Yes.
They had, like, a hashtag, who is Emio? They had this trailer, and that's it. No other details. Nothing. There was never any rumor about anything related to this before, so this came out of nowhere.
So obviously Nintendo considers this a big deal, because this isn't some weird, like, visual novel that, like, only Japan's getting.
I mean, it could be, but it wouldn't be something only Japan's getting. I mean, but yeah. We got that Famicom Detective Club or whatever games here now.
Yeah, we did.
They were very well be something
Direct,
like
but
that.
Nintendo didn't do, like, some cryptic teaser for them that they shadow dropped.
Yeah.
And some random warning. They just said, like, oh, this is happening in Nintendo Direct, and they told you exactly what it was.
But
with, like, no hype and, like, no mention again until it came out.
But, for example, the thing that this reminds me of the most, the only time that Nintendo did something like this, where it really reminds me of this specifically, was Pandora's Tower.
Yeah. Again,
and that's
that
because
was
Pandora's Tower, it was a website that just launched, like, oh, Nintendo's got a website for a new game, and it had a picture of a blonde girl who had, like, a mark on her back. Like, it was from behind her. It was like a photo of her back with her face kind of in profile. And only like up to like her nose or something. And that was it. No title for a game, no name of a studio working on it, nothing. And then people were like going through the website code and finding like Bible verses and stuff in there. I remember people thought it was like a Zelda game at one point.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Like there was all sorts of like weird discussions. People were like finding bits of code and like going like, why are there Bible multiverses in this? What the hell does this mean?
Again, this is, like, much different from that because, like, that was a Japanese website that was only in Japanese. There was no English equivalent of this website hosted on Nintendo of America servers or Nintendo of Europe.
That could also be just attributed to the time, though. To, like, the era in which it came out in, you know?
No, but the point is, it wasn't a game that Nintendo was planning on selling globally. It wasn't like, oh, this is going to be, like, our next big major IP game. This is a game that a partner studio, like, developed for the Japanese market.
I don't think this is Nintendo's next big game either. This one.
Well, they're treated. I mean, this is the fact that again, I want to point out the fact that all the socials globally posted this at the same time, and they're teasing it means that Nintendo is considering this a bit of a big deal. Like this is like a bit more promotion.
I would argue against that. I would argue against that because when Pandora's Tower was announced, was around when like Xenoblade, The Last Story, those were all kind of announced close to each other.
Sure.
And there were a bunch of other games too, and never came out stateside, never came out in the West.
Okay.
Fairly big games. Like Xenoblade's a big game to not come out stateside, and they had no interest in releasing that.
Oh, Nintendo America didn't think it was a big game.
The Last Story is from the creator of Final Fantasy, and they had no intention of releasing that stateside.
Yeah.
The reason why I say that, like, you can't compare them posting that... Can I finish, please?
Yeah.
The reason I'm saying that you can't compare those then to this now is that Nintendo releases, like, everything now. Nintendo doesn't do that shit anymore. Like, Nintendo used to play that game of going, like, oh, we're only releasing half of our games outside of Japan. They don't do that anymore. Pretty much everything comes out now that Nintendo puts out. So, like, why wouldn't they put it on all of their social accounts? Like, I'm not saying I don't think Nintendo intends to release this everywhere. I think they do. But I think Nintendo just intends to release pretty much everything everywhere. I think this very much is a partner game in the same way that Pandora's Tower was. It's like the partner developer. It's not a first party.
Nintendo still has Japan exclusive games. There's a Buddy Mission Bond, which is published by Nintendo. That only exists. Those
are extremely rare cases. Extremely rare.
Right.
Like,
it's a lot more rare.
There's a big difference between that and what happened before.
Well, what I want to say about what happened before is that the commonality is like those games, like The Last Story and Xenoblade Chronicles were RPGs, and Nintendo of America very specifically wasn't interested in localizing or publishing JRPGs. The administration of Nintendo America didn't think JRPGs were a relevant genre for this market, and weren't interested in putting in the resources to localize them just because of that.
And it was a big mistake.
Yeah.
The Switch era has swayed things very much in the opposite direction for the pendulum.
Well, Xenoblade since blew up and became like a much bigger IP than they anticipated. So.
But I mean, same thing goes. I think if The Last Story came out now, there'd be no question that it was coming stateside.
Yeah. I don't
think there'd be any question.
Oh, yeah, no,
it's the creator of Final Fantasy. It would be stupid for them not to release it, just like it was stupid for them not to plan on releasing it initially.
Maybe that was motivated by the fact that Miss Walker's previous games that generation, Blue Dragon and Lost Odyssey, didn't sell all too well on the Xbox.
By that measure, obscure horror games don't sell that well on any system.
Well, anyway, let's talk about the game.
Outside of Resident Evil. What is there to talk about the game? I mean, it's literally just a guy in a trench coat with a mask.
well, let's say like it's a horror game, obviously, right? It's got horror vibes.
I guess. Presumably.
Presumably. You don't think this has spoopy vibes to it?
Oh, I do, but who's to say what the hell it is, you know? This could be a JRPG for all we know. This could be the next Molotov game.
This is the next Kirby.
This could be a DLC character for Wii Sports, or not Wii Sports, Switch Sports game.
This is the new F-Zero.
Yeah. He's a detective, a hard-boiled detective character that wears a mask, and he's the new F-Zero racer.
Yes.
I mean, like I said, presumably it's a horror game, but we don't know anything.
The best speculation I saw on this today is that this is a new game by the Fatal Frame team. You know, Nintendo is like very close with Koei Tecmo, and also like Nintendo has some history with the Fatal Frame series. I think they published Maiden of the Blackwater on Wii U.
I think if it was that team, it would be a scantily clad high school girl.
I didn't necessarily.
In a trench coat wearing a mask with a face painted on it.
It looks very much like something that team would come up with. And I said the best speculation is like this is probably like that team, but instead like Nintendo's publishing the game instead of Tecmo.
To me, it looks more like, I don't know, it looks more like a really small horror game. Like it looks like it could be like a visual novel game or something.
It
but
could
like
be.
Maybe a little bit more, maybe something along the lines of, not thematically, but like gameplay wise, along the lines of like a Phoenix Wright type game. But like maybe more like with a horror story, you know?
It's interesting to me that the whole thing is interesting. Just like the way this was announced, this wasn't brought up in the Nintendo Direct.
No, at all, yeah.
This was like dropped in the middle of July, and Nintendo likes July announcements. Usually they're not usually games. Usually it's like some variation of hardware, like the Nintendo Switch Lite or something.
Again, this is the Switch successor, like I said.
But the way Nintendo chose to announce this by like not just including it in the Direct, even though obviously they were working on this and this was like ready to announce. It even has like an ESRB rating at this point. The way Nintendo chose to announce this apart from a Direct and with like a teaser that's like not like telling you like very much what it is strange and kind of suggests that they think this is something special.
I think the opposite. I think if this was something
well, you don't
Nintendo
do a
had
teaser
a lot of
for
teasers
something.
Easy to do. Like I think if they want to build some mystery because they know that the horror audience is going to be more into that. I think that I think if this was something that Nintendo had a lot of confidence in, that was like a really big deal for Nintendo, this would have been in the Direct. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying it's the opposite. The fact that it's not in the Direct is the opposite of that to me.
Not necessarily, because this gets its own spotlight, its own announcement separate from that, so that you're just talking about this. You're not talking about, oh yeah, there was that weird game, Emio, but let's talk about Zelda. Like, oh shit, did you see the new Zelda?
I just don't
Mario
see
and
it.
Luigi? Fuck yeah, Mario and Luigi.
Don't see it. I don't see any game that's like this.
That weird game, like this has its own spotlight, so that you're only talking about this.
I mean, you talked about like saying that you think the Fatal Frame developer is probably involved in this. None of the Fatal Frame games have sold as well as like the last story did. Like as an example.
That doesn't matter.
Well, that's what I'm just saying. Like I'm saying it's this is like a sub-million seller game. I don't think this is something Nintendo has.
So why is Nintendo giving this special treatment?
Because they can, because it's easy. I mean, literally tweeting out, making a trailer like this
they don't
and tweeting it out.
This is not normal.
Yeah, but it wasn't normal for them to do it with the website for Pandora's Tower either. Like I think it's comparable.
That was like years. That was like decades ago at this point.
Yeah, which made that even weirder then, because now it's much easier to do something like this.
So you ask, why are they doing that for this?
Like I said, I think it's a small project, and this is the way they thought was the best way to announce it. I don't think Nintendo has like huge hopes for it or anything. I don't think it's Nintendo's next big IP or anything. I don't think there's any. I think this is just a small little game, and this is just like the right way to announce this game, you know? I mean, it's just like, this is the way to do it for this game. This is what works for this type of game. It gets people intrigued and stuff, but I don't think this is gonna be like a big game. I don't think Nintendo has any anticipation.
No, I don't.
This is a big game.
I don't think like you can say like Nintendo expects this to be like a Zelda level IP or anything. I think Nintendo just thinks that this is something special. They got something good or interesting here that they want to give some special attention to, a spotlight to, and I mean, who knows? We gotta see it first, obviously. But it's just a thing like this is clearly a game Nintendo's putting out there, and giving it its own spotlight. And the way that they did it, and the way they did it, in the way of, just this cryptic teaser to where you don't know what it's about. So you can't just like say like, oh yeah, like that looks like a great concept, or oh, that looks stupid. So like the way they're doing it, like this cryptic teaser, so that you are just talking about this and speculating, that is very intentional.
Yeah, but again, like I said, it was the same thing with Pandora's Tower, you know?
They want people talking about this.
I think it was the same thing with Pandora's Tower, because they didn't include the name of the developer. They didn't even include the name of the game when they first, launched that website. It's the same kind of thing. It's like the idea of, the mystery is what makes it kind of fun. And like I said, with the Pandora's Tower thing, people were finding Bible verses that, if you've played Pandora's Tower and you go through the Bible verses that were in that, website and stuff that were hidden in that website, they all, match up. It goes thematically with what that game's about. But they didn't have to, hide that shit in code. They did that very intentionally so that people found that stuff, But Nintendo also didn't have huge hopes for Pandora's Tower. It's just that's the way you market a game like that. That's just you do something kind of interesting and fun. And Nintendo's that's the kind of company they are,
Yeah.
So I don't think this means that this project is particularly special. I just think it's
something
it's
Nintendo
just a weird
wants,
game, and
it's
that's
something
how Nintendo
wants.
to do it.
It's something Nintendo wants to highlight
At this moment, I guess.
Yeah, at this moment, for sure.
I don't think Nintendo looked at, when they were putting together their Direct and said, oh no, this is too good for that Direct. I don't think that factored into their thinking at all.
I mean, Nintendo is, very intentional what they put. They clearly did not want this to be overshadowed by other announcements. And that's the thing. If you put this in the Direct with Mario, Zelda, and Metroid Prime 4, it will get overlooked and overshadowed. It would just be, one more item on the weird game, Emio, and then people would just go on with overanalyzing the Metroid Prime 4 trailer. And I think Nintendo didn't want it to get lost in that discussion.
I don't know. I think you're reading more into this than it is. That's my guess.
I feel I'm on base, but I'll agree to disagree here.
I think this is going to be a very small game. This is going to.
Yeah, I'm not saying this is budget wise. This is probably not a huge budget game. Horror games tend not to be. I just think this is something
outside of Resident Evil and.
I think this is
Silent
just
Hill.
something Nintendo wants people to be aware of.
Yeah, I mean that's fine, but it's like I said, when I compared this to Pandora's Tower, I think this is along the same lines as that. It's a small studio connected game. It's like a third-party studio that Nintendo has contracted and worked with, and they're going to publish the game, Nintendo will, and it'll just be like a little game from some Japanese partner they have.
Oh yeah.
And that's it.
I'm feeling like this is probably the next game for the Fatal Frame team.
I mean,
Nintendo has a strong partnership.
They have a good relationship.
They have a good relationship there. They do horror games. I can't think of any other studio Nintendo has a relationship with that has any kind of history or pedigree in doing horror games.
There's a few, especially when you're looking more at the kind of more obscure Japanese small ones. You have to look at Danganronpa, which started out as a PSP game, I think. And that studio has been making a bunch of games for Switch. They have one that was just announced in the Direct, and they had a little weird short game that was released on Switch. I remember I played the demo for it or something that was just kind of out of nowhere type game or something, just weird. I could totally see this being from the Danganronpa team or something.
Yeah, I guess this is, this could be.
I could see this being the Famitsu detective ones that they did the remakes of, a new one in that franchise, or a game along those lines, Are
you talking Famicom Detective?
Yeah, that's it. Famicom.
Oh, okay.
Not Famitsu,
yeah. I don't know.
There's also little small games too. There's what's that one indie game? It's a Japanese indie game that's black and white, and it's got this. It's an RPG, but it's got these really creepy vibes to it. I'm trying to think of what's called.
Moon? I don't know.
No. Moon was I don't think it was Japanese. I think it was a faux JRPG type thing or something. No, this is I think it's Omari, I think.
Oh, Omari, yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's a really creepy, weird, that's what this gives me vibes of, is stuff like that, more than anything else. I think of something like that, but maybe less indie. If Omari is an indie game, then this would be the,
Also, Moon is a Japanese RPG designed in Japan by Japanese developers.
Oh, it was? Okay.
Yes.
I thought that was a Western game and that, people making RPG Maker games type thing.
Nope. Came out originally for the PlayStation 1 in 1997 exclusively in Japan. Designed by Kenichi Nishi and Taro Kudo.
I could also see this being like a Yoko Taro game.
This could be Yoko Taro.
He would do weird shit like this, you know? And he's got some big franchises tied to him.
He seems like a busy person, but yeah, it could be.
He does tons of stuff, though, that people think. He did that, like, what's that card game on Switch, you know, that has had like 3 games now.
Oh, yeah, true.
It kind of came out of nowhere.
You know what? Actually, this might actually be Yoko Taro, actually. That is a very good speculation.
Yeah. I heard on the Game Witness forums, or Discord, I should say, Fried Shoes said that he wants to will into existence that this is a Suda51 game. That's
here we go.
Published by Nintendo.
Actually, when you brought up Yoko Taro, it brought me to something that the Nier producer said earlier this year, back in May to Famitsu Magazine. Yusuke Saito, the series producer for Nier, teased that he might be working on something brand new with Yoko Taro and Keiichi Okabe. Quote, I've been talking about wanting to do something with Yoko and Okabe for some time now, and I'll have something a bit more put together to say in the not too distant future, so please stay tuned. It might be near, but it might not be near. That's all I can say for now.
Yeah, I mean, I could see it being something like that, yeah.
Maybe this is what he was talking about?
Wasn't there something that, like, Suda51 was talking about working with the guy that did, what's that, like, Twin Peaks-inspired game?
Oh, shoot, I
Deadly
know.
Premonition, is it?
Yeah, Deadly Premonition, that's
like,
it.
there was something, I think, where it was, like, Suda51, the guy behind that game, and Yoko Taro talking about doing something. And it was just kind of like maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm confusing something, but there's always like talk from these like little weird obscure developers in Japan, you know, about like collaborating on weird projects, and sometimes they turn up and sometimes they don't. Kind of like, what was it, the Yakuza developer talking about wanting to do a game on Switch that never materialized, you know? There's like that kind of stuff happens. So I think that's kind of more along the lines of what this is going to be. Like, I'm not anticipating a major project. I'm anticipating maybe a cult favorite, you know? I'm seeing this more in the vein of like, I mean, I guess Fatal Frame or Deadly Premonition, or not something of like Nier's caliber, but like another like Yoko Taro game, because he's done a bunch of other stuff that's kind of weird. And
anyway, this is a weird game. We'll have to see more about it.
Yeah, be interesting to see what actually comes from this. But I'm kind of sad that you can't dissect it the way they were able to with like the Pandora's Tower website. You know, because it would have been really fun.
Apparently,
if this announcement came out the same way as that, it would have been really fun to see the people like breaking into code and.
Well, there is a website, and people are breaking into the code of the website.
There is.
Yes. And apparently Australia has rated it as well. And on the Australian version of the video, there's the rating, and apparently it's MA 15+, restricted 13 for strong themes, violence, suicide references / themes, cruelty, and domestic abuse.
This makes me think it almost assuredly is either Yoko Taro or the Danganronpa guys.
Right, yeah. But people were going into the code on the Japanese teaser website for this, and apparently the only thing they found is it plays like a different version of the video with like the bad guy like having like a slightly different smile. But then they also noticed that in the code, like there's code for it to play one of 2 videos randomly. Yeah.
Strange. Where's the Bible verses hidden in the code? Come on, Nintendo.
Right, yeah. That's all we got for now.
But that'll be exciting to see what happens with that. I like it when Nintendo does this kind of stuff. Like, I
love it too.
I loved it when this was happening with Pandora's Tower, because you were watching people dissect it like in real time practically, you know? Like, it was just really fun to see all that stuff happening. So, and Nintendo hasn't really done something like that probably since that. That was probably the last time they did something like this. So, we'll have to see what else comes for Emio.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Now let's move on to full spoilers. Full spoilers is where we talk about what we've been watching in full spoilers. And we have 2 shows we're discussing this week, same as last week, but only 1 episode of each show this week. Let's kick things off with The Boys, Season 4, Episode 6, Dirty Business, in which we get the return from Gen V of Tech Knight.
Yes.
He's doing a Federalist Society party. Total right-wing party. They sneak into it. They do the parallel to Spider-Man, which was pretty funny. The little last tag about his safe word was funny.
Oh, yeah. I thought that was cute. You lead the way. You go off.
Okay, so I thought this episode was pretty funny. I think that's like the main thing I got from it. I thought it was a really funny episode. I thought there were a lot of like really funny bits that I really dug. I think Tech Knight becoming even more of a horrible person than he was in Gen V, like finding out about his family being like slave catchers is where they built their fortune. And the way he was like talking about that to A-Train. And then how it came out later, how they finally were able to break him by like, going into his finances and making like massive donations to all these like black charities, like Black Lives Matter and stuff was like a hilarious way of like breaking his character.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I thought it was really fun. There's some really gross stuff with Web Slinger with his web hole.
Oh yeah. Oh, for sure.
It was super gross. The stuff with Ashley. Oh, God. Ugh.
Yeah.
With Ashley and Tech Knight when she's like wiping her juices off on Huey's mask. Ugh. It's gonna give me nightmares.
Yeah, so, okay.
That's what I think about when I think of this episode. And, I think probably the funniest moment in the entire episode, though, was after they shot Sister Sage in the head and she disappeared.
Oh, yeah.
And then she was back and Homelander was trying to talk to her, but she's clearly just like out of it and just like in her like lobotomy version of herself.
Well, she's been lobotomized at that point.
And then the best, cause she does the lobotomies to herself and like basically she was lobotomized by the bullet in her head,
Yeah, exactly. So she's like, she's dumb now.
Yeah, and then they had the part where Newman, like, had the conversation with her earlier at the party before all of that, where it, like, kind of, like, inspired Newman to kind of take charge once, like, Homelander was blanking and wasn't able to do anything. And then she kind of stepped forward and said, who's gonna do all of this? Me. And then she took the bull by the horns, metaphorically speaking. And then she, like, looked over at Sister Sage and gave, like, the head nod, and Sister Sage gave the head nod back. And then she was like, okay, yeah, and then gave the head nod back. And then it became clear, like, what's going on here? Like, are we on the same page? What's going on? And Newman just doesn't realize that Sister Sage is lobotomized at that moment. I thought that was absolutely hilarious.
Oh yeah, definitely.
We got to see Firecracker go up against Starlight again. Starlight put her down pretty quickly, but, also, like, had a moment where she apologized, saying, like, even though you're a horrible person, like, I'm still sorry for my end of what happened, what I did, and took responsibility for it. I'm not too terribly interested in this storyline between Starlight and Firecracker, particularly, but we had that moment. And, speaking of Firecracker, the episode basically ended.
Yeah, that ending.
Another gross, funny moment with Homelander's milk fetish.
Yes. Okay. Well,
besides that, I mean, like, what else?
So that was your opinion on the episode, right?
Yeah. I mean, we also got some stuff with Butcher and we got the reveal that we anticipated last week.
Yeah. The reveal that everybody saw coming. Yeah. Okay. So this was horrible. This was like the worst hour of television I've seen all year for any show. The worst. Probably the worst episode. No, I'm sorry. Definitely the worst episode of The Boys ever. This was just mean-spirited. Pointless. And here's the issue I have. It's all the Tech Knight stuff. The rest was like typical boys stuff, which is like, I thought it's fine. Like, I like the Sister Sage, like the nod. I thought that was funny. I like the reveal with Butcher, even though like it was obvious and like you guessed it.
Yeah, I think they dove too much into it.
Yeah,
I think they played too much into it.
I like the way
as bad as the similar moment they had in a season of Dexter that was really bad. Like they way overplayed it in that one, but they kind of did overplay it a little bit here too.
But what really soured me on the episode was the entire sequence involving Huey and Tech Knight. And Huey going
dungeon.
The torture dungeon, where they basically had, Tech Knight and Ashley, like, sexually assault Huey. Mm-hmm. I just thought, like, that was crass, that was mean-spirited, that was over the top. I don't think, like, sexual assault or abuse should be played up for laughs in the first place. And it's also, like, the timing of it. It's also the timing of it, because this is, like, right after we just had that big emotional, with Huey, like, having to put his dad down and say goodbye to his dad.
I'll agree that
so
there
they
was
have
like
to
a
do
weird
that.
tonal thing too, with where Huey was breaking down and crying at the end of the episode.
Yeah.
At first it was kind of funny, like the way it was played, and then it was played more as like I'm not okay, and then he said like, I miss my dad.
Yeah.
And it was his way of accepting that, and that kind of played off a little weird tonally after everything that was happening in the sex dungeon.
Yeah, yes it did. Yes. It was kind of total whiplash, because the whole sex dungeon sequence was a comedy. It was, Eric Kripke confirmed in an interview that was the entire bit they had that was just based off of a joke about Batman, where like, oh, Batman's Batcave would definitely be a sex dungeon, and he'd be like, he's totally into S&M, right?
Yeah.
It's
where I divert from you is when you talk about like the sexual assault aspect, and I think they were starting to play into that when Tech Knight was about to cut into Huey and make a new hole after he discovered
definitely.
That. But everything before that was under the assumption that it wasn't Huey, that it was Webslinger or whatever, and that he was like into that. They even had Huey like randomly saying things out, and they're like, what was that? And he was like, oh, I just like to say random words, because he was like looking for the safe word.
Right. But but if you
so the implication they're making there is that wasn't.
If you pay attention to the scene, there's every indication that Tech Knight knew it wasn't Web Weaver, like almost immediately, because you gotta remember Tech Knight's superpowers, like he's the world's greatest detective, because he has like all his senses are heightened to superhuman levels. So he has super sight, super smell, super touch, super hearing.
I would disagree just because.
And there was all the cues that they showed throughout the sequence where like Tech Knight was like reading his pulse, and like reading all these. Yeah. So like there was the implication that he already knew he wasn't dealing. He just kept going with it. And then like at the end when it came to like where he was like questioning him, saying, okay, say your safe word, say the safe word. And he couldn't, at that point, he already 100% knew he wasn't dealing with Web Weaver.
Yeah, at that point, but maybe, but like the way I'm looking at it is that it should have been what you're saying, that he's like such a good detective that they did it. To me, the reveal, like when he revealed who Huey was, he seemed a surprise.
No,
that's the way they played it. He did to me.
He didn't seem surprised. No,
he did to me when
he pulled it off and he's like, "Oh, Huey Campbell." Like,
no, he said, "Huey Campbell, I know who you are." Like he said like that, but like,
yeah, I know who
yanked it off right after a response, and he didn't act like as if he had known it all along. Like there were cues to point it to where like logically he should have known all along. I agree with you there that logically he should have. I think it's a misplaying of the writing that they didn't do that. Like I don't think that's what they did at all.
Even like quibbling about like the definition, like, oh, was it like really sexual assault or whatever? Like I think the whole sequence is still pretty bad and mean spirited, because like they put Huey in a situation where he's going to have sexual acts performed on him against his will, and the whole joke is, haha, he's undercover and he can't object or not consent to anything happening to him, or he'll blow his cover.
I can agree with you on that.
That's pretty shitty.
I can agree with that, but like I think a little bit different in the perception of the way the earlier events happened. Like I don't think Ashley had any fucking clue.
Right. No, she didn't. Example. Yeah, she didn't have any clue.
So all the horrible shit she was doing was like perfectly.
I just think that was like a shitty, mean-spirited sequence that didn't like add anything to the episode or to the storyline.
I think they were trying to do it. They were trying to do what they ended up coming to an end with, the scene with Huey and Starlight at the end, where he's admitting that he's not okay and that he misses his dad. I think they were trying to kind of push him to like his rock bottom.
To like push him to like an emotional place to where he'd finally acknowledge
he had to acknowledge it. Yeah, I agree. I don't think it was well executed.
Right. Yeah.
I think part of the problem with The Boys is, and we talked about this last week, is that the show is not subtle, like at all.
No,
like there's
definitely not.
No subtlety to the point, and like it's not meant to be subtle, but I think that sometimes it could be a little bit more subtle, and it would be better for it. You know, I think that's a fault of the show.
It kind of like I was thinking about it, and it kind of like reminded me of like this is what the comic version is like, right? The comic version is like all these crass segments doing it. They're just like they're mostly like mean spirited and done for shock value, and mostly just to say like superhero X fucking sucks, and this is why. And it kind of felt like that's what. Oh, Batman sucks. he's this wealthy asshole who preys on poor people and has a sex dungeon. That's the joke. Yeah.
See, I can agree with that. I think that scene was a relatively small scene in the episode. It was a focus point for you and why you didn't like it.
It was a big like part of the episode.
See, I liked some of the parallels with Tech Knight in this episode. I loved how cocky he was being towards A-Train, and I loved that tied into his undoing at the end.
One of the things I like is because because Tech Knight is supposed to be, the boys' version of Batman, like they had the scene where he's talking to Homelander, he's talking about like a team up, because Batman Superman is like the all-time classic team up, in DC Comics. So Tech Knight's talking about like a team up with Homelander, and Homelander just like mocks the idea, like that you can't even fly. Yeah.
Wasn't there a scene it was in this episode too, where when Black Noir was sitting with his mask off, the new Black Noir.
Yeah, that was
and didn't he make a comment about that he can fly or something? Like he said something, maybe I misheard that, where he said like, I can fly or something like that. He said at the end when he was talking to Deep.
Might have, like, I don't know, like, that scene was like so whatever to me. Like,
I'm only bringing it up because of the parallel about the
like maybe he said I would have to like rewatch if I don't rewatch that episode. So like, I'll just pretend he did. We'll just pretend he did.
We'll just look for the transcript,
Yeah, we'll look for the transcript. Yeah, exactly. But that was that episode. That scene was the Deep imparting like his non-wisdom. That like,
it's like he might not.
Be
this might be hard to believe, but people are often don't respect me.
Right. Oh yeah.
This might be hard to believe.
And his newfound belief that just violence against people, like making people fear him, is now like the best path. Like, okay.
Yeah. Like I didn't think the sex dungeon stuff was funny before. I thought it was funny at the end when they had Tech Knight tied up and they were, 100 million to Black Lives Matter and stuff like that.
Like the way to truly hurt him, because he was into physical pain, sexually, that and holes.
Yeah. So I thought that stuff was funny. I thought just like the way they played up the kind of Federalist Society. I thought the whole meeting with Homelander bringing up the coup to all those like right-wing nut jobs, and the one guy that was clearly talking about, very parallel to certain senators and congressmen we have.
It's funny because it showed like how clueless like Homelander was about like the way things work. It's like he started like spouting off propaganda, and like the woman was like, "Oh, that's the shit we feed the idiots." Like, come on, like. That's for the cattle. Like, don't feed the message back to us.
Yeah. So I thought that's the kind of stuff that I thought was funny. And like I said, the funniest scene to me of all was the head nods between Newman and, Sister Sage when Sister Sage was lobotomized.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I was like cracking up. And just kept going.
Another thing which I don't want to forget about, that I did actually like about this episode, although I don't like where it's probably headed, is A-Train's redemption arc. When A-Train saved MM, and he got a taste of like being like a real hero. When
the kid was like looking at him and they had that little moment.
And you can see like on A-Train's face, actually feels good to have like people like respect you as a real hero.
I'm kind of worried in that where that's going to go to, because I think that they've set up A-Train like he could go on a redemptive arc before and then didn't.
Yeah,
they kind of pulled back last minute, and that was like frustrating.
Yeah, because they did that like season 3 where it looked like he was going to like he apologized to Huey, and then he went and he killed that racist Soup, and then he had a heart attack, and like then it just seemed like he was just going back to just normally trained stuff after that.
Mm-hmm.
But it looks like, I guess they're continuing like that idea here. But I think some people said like, oh, this is probably just leading up to Homelander killing him. This is just leading up to him being found out.
I'd honestly, I'd rather have that than have A-Train just go back to being the way he was.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Because I'd rather have his arc end by him being murdered while he's doing the right thing than have his arc end after he like.
Oh yeah, he better not go back to. Yeah, he better not go back to being like normal A-Train. that would just be bad writing.
Yeah, and that's I think I'm more worried about that than I am about Homelander killing him.
Right.
Just because that kind of things happened before. It also happened with, the Deep. The Deep was also on a kind of a redemptive arc in a way. And then becoming more self-aware and stuff, and then that just got completely thrown out the window very quickly.
The Deep is very much a character that that they just want to keep around
just to torture
as a joke character and not really. So he's never going to have a real redemptive arc.
Yeah, they started on it though. I think what was it in season 2 maybe it was in season 1.
It was season.
Where was the time when he was hooking up with that one girl and she was putting her fingers in his gills? And
I believe that was season 2 when he was part of that Scientology.
No, that was before the Scientology stuff.
Was it? I thought that was during it.
No, he was sent to a different city to be a hero in a different city. And he was there and he was hooking up with this groupie and she put her finger, I think it was season 1 then.
I think that was late season 1, yeah.
It was paralleling what he did to Starlight. And the idea is that somebody was violating him and him having to come to terms with understanding that, what it feels like to be violated. And they did that and then they were setting some stuff up in season 2 as well where they were playing on the idea of him feeling powerless and feeling violated and stuff. And then they just turned it into a joke. They had some kind of a redemptive arc kind of thing going for him and they just turned it into a joke.
And it's clear, they're never going to commit to that for the Deep.
It is a negative sign of the writing of the boys in general, and just that, you can look at a few things. Like I said, it's the A-Train and the Deep having redemptive arcs that are truncated and just kind of changed and brought back the status quo. We've talked about the idea of the show treading water and just kind of, going back to the status quo at the end of every season kind of thing. There's been other issues kind of like that, and you see some of that here too,
Oh yeah,
so I don't know.
Sure.
It's kind of like the immaturity of the show,
Yeah, exactly. And it's kind of frustrating.
It's part of the humor of the show and part of the satire of the show, but sometimes you can kind of have both. You can kind of have the satire and also have these redemptive arcs and also have these other things going on. But it's like they lean too far into one,
Yeah, exactly.
It's kind of I think the main issue we've always kind of brought up with the boys whenever we've had frustrations with part of a season of the boys has always kind of come down to the same kind of thing,
And also there's the thing where this is the third to last episode of the season and it doesn't feel like there was very much forward momentum in the plot other than Butcher's revelation. It didn't seem to be any much forward motion into going into anything.
Which again is ever since Fight Club, the whole imaginary character that someone's seeing, they're actually imaginary, they're not real. It's nobody did it as well as Fight Club. And once Fight Club did it, it's it becomes very obvious when anybody else is setting up to do that. And a perfect example of that, I mentioned, there was a season of Dexter. It was one that had Colin Hanks in it, and he played a serial killer, and he had an imaginary character as well. He had this professor that he used to be the TA for, this professor, and he had killed this professor, but was still envisioning him as an imaginary friend. And then they played it off oh, isn't this amazing? We hid this from you the whole time. And then after the episode aired, I remember they had a behind the episode kind of type thing, they always have with House of the Dragon or stuff like that. It was playing during what the credits were rolling, and they were way too patting themselves on the back about hiding this. And it was the most obvious.
I thought they were
twist.
Geniuses.
Yeah, and it was such an obvious twist. And I think the only time since Fight Club that somebody has pulled that twist off well, where it was still obvious, but it wasn't done poorly, was Mr. Robot.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And it was still obvious, but they just did it better. They played more into the ramifications of it rather than just the shock of it,
And I think doing the reveals sooner rather than later really helped with that too,
Yeah, they didn't pretend that they had this great secret that nobody would have figured out.
No, it was by the end of the first season, you knew that Mr. Robot, his dad, was not a real person that existed out in the world. It was in Elliot's head.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, like, they didn't give him, like, a lot of screen time beforehand either, to where, like, and there was, like, a lot going on, so, you know, there wasn't a lot of time to process that, like, oh, Mr. Robot isn't talking to anybody else.
Yeah.
You know, like, so you didn't have, like, a lot of, like, opportunity to, like, kind of put that together before they dropped that, so it was, like, a lot more effective.
I think a big part of it, too, was that aspect was such a small part of what was going on with Elliot.
Yeah, like I said, there was so much going on.
There's so much more to it, you know, like, there were revelations that happened later. They did the whole revelation about him, you know, being in prison, you know, with the one thing, and like, they did so many other kind of revelations throughout the series that kind of piggybacked on like the same kind of basic trauma condition that he was suffering. That really played into it, that like made it that wasn't like the be all end all reveal. It was only a small piece of what was going on in Elliot's head, you know? And I think that's what made that work for me. It's like, it was still very predictable. Like, you could still see it coming from a mile away, but they didn't like pretend that they were like blowing our minds. They weren't like, oh my God, aren't you so impressed with us? It wasn't like played up like that. Whereas like, it was here in The Boys. It was much worse in Dexter.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. Because, you know, like, it was obvious, like, maybe not obvious from the first scene, but, like, as the scenes went on, you know, it was pretty obvious. Joe Kessler was only showing up for Butcher, only talking to Butcher. There was never a scene where, like, he interacted with any other character in any way.
Yeah.
And so like,
unless Butcher was also there, like, the one doctor character that they cut the leg off of, you know, like.
Yeah, but the doctor, like, never acknowledges Kessler either.
No, so. but I mean, like, Kessler, like, you know, grabbed him at one point, I think, but yeah, the implication is that was it was Butcher that was grabbing him, not Kessler. And Butcher was there the entire time as well, so that's very plausible that would have happened. So it wasn't, you know.
Well, like, there was never a scene of, like, Kessler talking to another character who's not Butcher, and, like, that character also acknowledging Kessler's presence.
Yeah, it just made it kind of obvious.
Yeah, but I did like the way they revealed it by, like, having Kessler pleading with Butcher about his plan, and then Becca is also there, you know, begging Butcher to reject it, and then Kessler immediately, like, turns and, like, and screams at Becca, you know?
Yeah, shut your hole, or whatever.
Who we, like, 100% know is a figment of Butcher's imagination at this point. Mm-hmm. So, like, having Kessler, like, acknowledge her was, like, a cool way to do the reveal.
Yeah, I think if I didn't see it coming 1,000 miles away.
Yeah.
From, like, the very first moment we met Kessler, like, it was obvious that that's what was going to happen. So if it wasn't so incredibly obvious, that moment when he, like, yelled at Becca would have been like, holy shit, you know? But
right, yeah,
it was so obvious before that it defanged that moment quite a bit.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It was still a cool way to do it. I agree. So that's pretty much it for The Boys, Season 4, Episode 6. We're going to be talking about Episode 7 next week. Let's move on now to House of the Dragon. Season 2, Episode 4, The Red Dragon and the Gold. So
this was the best episode of the season. This was,
I'd say, the best episode of the series.
A masterclass in television, for sure. Yeah.
Not the best episode of the franchise, but the best episode of the series.
I'd say franchise. That's a tall order.
If you say franchise, it includes Game of Thrones. But if you say series, I think it's probably the best episode of the series.
No, yeah, I'd agree with that. That's fair. Because, very good. A lot more action-packed than you would expect going into it.
Well, we've been saying for a while, like, that we were anticipating that we might be getting some actual action in this episode.
Right.
You know, that the things had gone far enough that, like, it's like, okay, yeah, now we're gonna get something. We gotta get something now, you know? They've been building up, and it's like, it's gotta be coming now. Like, they've set things in the right course, and it's gotta pay off now. And we got to see that. We got to see the first, I guess we had a moment with dragons fighting before, but it was kind of one-sided, and it was played off as being unintentional with Eamon's character at the season finale of season 1, with Eamon chasing, I can't think of the character's name, Luke, the series, on his dragon. But it wasn't like dragon warfare. It was just like taunting and humiliation and stuff, and going too far, and then that leading to an unfortunate end. This was straight up dragon warfare.
Yeah, this was the first major battle involving dragons.
It's also the first time since Game of Thrones where we actually saw people, like, in mass, besides like one person or something, being killed by dragons, you know?
Right.
We got to see like, it reminded me in a way of the loot train episode of Game of Thrones, where Daenerys, like, burned the Lannister forces, and the way they played that from the angle of, you're seeing everything from the perspective of, like, Jaime.
Yeah.
And like how it's like the horror of like a weapon of mass destruction entering the battlefield, you know? So you had to see it from the perspective of the losing side of that.
Dragons in Game of Thrones are like nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
You know?
Exactly. So it's like they had like aspects of that were similar. Like the moment that
and probably because
dragon,
like in Game of Thrones, it's like that's a battle where like only one side has nukes, right? And this is a battle where like both sides have nukes.
Yeah, but in particular, like the moment Vhagar showed up, and it cut to the castle walls of Rook's Rest, which is the castle where the battle took place.
Yeah, which is like a fairly small, you know, barely defended castle. Like it's not like really a prize, you know. So like nobody like expected it to be like the scene of a battle. But like Aemon's running like a strategy where you know he wants to box in the blacks, and he decides, you know, he is taking it because it will rattle him, and because and precisely because it is an easy target. You know, that's his reason.
Yeah, it's like let's just go around and take easy wins and deplete them of all of their forces one by one as they sit around going mad trying to figure out the big play.
Right, yeah.
You know? And that's what Aemon's doing, and yeah, so this is a small prize. The one big benefit is that it is, like, I guess the closest castle to, like, Dragonstone or something. So it cuts off, like, a lot of the options of getting to land from Dragonstone for, like, Rhaenyra's forces. So that's kind of the strength it does have, whereas, like, everyone anticipated, like, Harrenhal to be, like, the big play because it's the biggest castle and it's more central to the Riverlands. But
that's where Daemon is currently going mad.
As Lord Larry said, though, like, that castle's more handicapped than he is, or more disabled than he is, you know?
Right, yeah, exactly.
And we see that from Daemon's perspective in several scenes, both last week and this week. Yeah, but all the stuff with Vhagar when he showed up, and then it showed the castle walls, and you saw like the lord of that castle who's on like Daenerys' council, and they're like, we need to get you out of here, and he's just kind of like looking at him like what's the point? Like, this is hopeless, you know? Like, what the fuck are we supposed to do to this, you know? There's nothing we can do. That kind of feeling of hopelessness, because I mean, dragons already was bad enough, but then when Vhagar shows up, it's just this massive dragon. It's like a pure feeling of dread that oversets like everybody there.
Oh, yeah.
On the black side.
Aemon's dragon is like one of the biggest dragons like ever. It's just crazy like how much he dwarfed the other dragons involved.
There are apparently, from what I've read, there's one dragon that's supposed to be comparable to his size that's still alive, and then there's one dragon that's bigger than him that's still alive.
Oh, that's insane, yeah.
So the one that's comparable to him we've seen, that was the one that Daemon was singing to last season.
Right.
That's Vermithor. And he was the dragon in the very first episode of House of the Dragon, the very first scene of House of the Dragons, when it shows the one older king that died and when he passed it on to his grandson, that was Rhaenyra's father, you know? That king, that was his dragon, is Vermithor. And he's the one we saw Daemon singing to last season. The other one is a wild dragon. It's never had a rider. And it's supposed to be as big as Balerion the Black Dread, which is the biggest dragon to ever live. Like, you know, the biggest tamed dragon to ever live. But yeah, Vhagar's massive. I love the way they play his scale, his size up, you know? But we got a crazy aerial battle. We got to see how dragons can actually fight by kind of locking up with each other and like cutting each other with their claws, and not just like shooting fire from a distance or taking a big bite, but like actually like fighting like wild animals, you know?
Right. Oh yeah. And I mean, this was great. The major consequences of this. Okay, first of all, Team Black lost a major player, Rhaenys.
Yeah.
You know, like she was,
the queen who never was.
Right, the queen who never was. Was she,
and her dragon. She had the biggest dragon on Team Black.
Yes, she did. And it's crazy because, like, when we saw them fighting, like, she had the biggest dragon, but her dragon was still dwarfed by Aemon's.
Yeah.
You know, like, that's how big Aemon's dragon is. You know, and That's crazy. I think was Rhaenys like Rhaenyra's hand at this point?
No,
Who's her hand?
I don't think I think it might have been her husband. It might be Lord Corlys.
Yeah. But she was definitely a close advisor to Rhaenyra.
Yeah. She was making some of the smartest moves throughout this season.
She was always portrayed as like being like a very shrewd
and level-headed, yeah.
And level-headed person, and now she's gone.
Yeah.
That's crazy. And the other crazy thing is like Aegon, Aegon, not dead, but very much burnt and crippled. And the crazy thing about it was Aemond is responsible because he directly attacked Aegon.
Yeah. You saw Aegon saying like, thank the gods, and then like immediately Aemond's like,
right, yeah.
Dracarys,
yeah, Dracarys. Yeah, exactly. And we know, this is because Aegon humiliated him last episode, and we know Aemond is, very petty and holds grudges.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's not just the last episode, it's when...
It's very much like
the whole thing that pushed Aemon into taming that dragon, the whole scene that got him to lose his eye, everything that's related to that was him retaliating against the bullying that was occurring to him from his siblings and nephews, I guess.
Yeah.
They would bully him, and the ringleader of the bullies was Aegon.
Right. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
He was he was the guy that was leading the bullying. I mean, the other ones just were going along with it, they weren't actually pursuing it. But it was like the one that, dressed up a pig and said it was his dragon, said it was Aemon's dragon. That was Aegon,
Right. Yeah. And so he's never forgotten any of that.
Yeah. So he's always kind of had like a thing. And then we saw it last episode when we saw it at the pleasure house. That scene was very much meant to show that is still something that that's on his mind. That Aemon still has his resentment about that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
And that Aegon is still a piece of shit. Like, he didn't grow out of that.
Oh, yeah. He never matured. We see that in all of his scenes. Like, he's a pretty useless king, right? Like, he has no clue how to run a kingdom. All he wants is to have this war and for him to be leading the vanguard on his dragon so he could be a hero, That's all he dreams about, is going out there, winning a big battle for himself and being hailed as a hero and have all this glory hoisted upon him. That's what he wants to do. He doesn't want to deal with the administration. There's a scene where the councils, they're talking about administrative stuff.
I think that was the most clever scene in the episode.
Yeah. Right, yeah.
Especially when Aemon started talking to him in High Valyrian, and they showed him speaking it very fluently and cleanly and poetically. And then Aegon responds in broken Valyrian, can barely comprehend the words he's saying,
Oh, yeah.
He's like, but me make war? He just can barely speak Valyrian. And it's that kind of that private humiliation, because nobody else there speaks Valyrian. It's just Aemon and Aegon,
Right. And Aemon's better at it because,
humiliating him,
And Aemon's better at it because, Aemon was more introverted, having been bullied, all his childhood, it's clear that, he put everything into studying,
Well, he didn't have a dragon, so
he didn't have a dragon. So
when Aegon had a dragon, when his nephews, when they all had dragons, and he was the only one that didn't of that group, he was desperately wanted a dragon. So learning Valyrian, learning strategy, all these kind of things that are kind of expected of the Targaryens to know and to be good at, and being a good fighter. All of these things are things that he put front and center so that he could
to compensate,
for his lack of a dragon. And then he ended up getting the biggest, meanest dragon, as well.
Right, yeah. And that's the moment where he truly felt powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's much more of a shrewd, strategist, thinker than Aegon is or ever was.
Yeah, he's more fitting for the crown than Aemon, but he's still not fitting for the crown, because the difference between him and Rhaenys is that both of them are shrewd, but Rhaenys is also level-headed, and Aemon is not level-headed.
No, not in the slightest.
Yeah. We got to see the Cat Paw dagger again.
Yeah, we did. It looked like Aemon was about to use it to finish off Aegon, but he was stopped by Kristen Cole, who caught him like halfway there, and so
well, Aemon had picked it up from where Aegon had crashed.
Yes.
So it was Aegon's dagger, and it was in his possession.
Yeah, it looked like Aemon was going to use it to finish him off before like Kristen Cole showed up, and he's obviously not going to stab his own brother to death for Kristen Cole. So
yeah, it's just a complication he doesn't need.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so the implication now is like this creates like a new succession crisis all over again. It's like, okay, well, like who succeeds Aegon? Well, it's Aemon, right? But like,
yeah, he would be next in line. It's important to notice that Aegon had a son. That was killed.
That was killed.
Yeah. So, he had a child son that's now dead. And so it goes back to like, well, then should it pass to Aegon's daughter who's very young? It's like we saw how they handle, women in power at this time in Westeros and how hard it was to get them to commit to that. And then you put somebody as strong as Aemon in the running as well. It is very much a parallel because now you have this parallel where the two people that would be considered for succession would be Aegon's now deceased son, then it would pass on to his daughter instead. So it's like, okay, so it's Aegon's daughter that would be the next in line, with the choice that people more want to have happen being Aemon, because he's like stronger, he has the biggest dragon, he knows them, he's more strategic, he's like, in all those ways, he's like more fitting for it. And it's kind of similar to what was happening in season 1, where you had the whole crisis before Aemon and Aegon were born, when it was Rhaenyra and Daemon.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
We always had Daemon and Aemon were always like a parallel of each other in a sense. Like it's almost like Daemon is Aemon's like idol. You could almost tell, like, there are scenes in the first season where you could see, like, Aemon was, like, looking at Daemon as if he was, like, his hero or something. And then we had a scene in this episode where Daemon's having another one of his Harrenhal hallucinations, and he's following somebody, a Targaryen with long blonde hair, who is wearing an eye patch. But then when he catches up to that hallucination and turns and looks at him, it's Daemon that he's wearing an eye patch. It's like himself. But it's clearly meant to imply Aemon, you know, as being like a kind of a continuation of his way of doing things, or his way as a Targaryen.
Yeah, exactly.
At least I thought so.
No, it makes sense to me. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit more about what's going on with Daemon and the witch that he seems to be infatuated with.
Yeah. Is it infatuation or is it just beguilement or amusement? Because she seems to know like a lot of personal information about him.
I think it's fascination. I think it's going to lead into beguilement, but I think right now it's just a fascination. He's fascinated by her because she does seem to know a lot about him, and he can't quite place her. Like, he can't quite figure her out.
Well, she's strange, right? She's a bastard, but she said her name's Rivers.
Alice Rivers.
Yep.
And yeah,
she seems to be like some sort of a rich, like sort of like the Red Woman, right?
Mm-hmm. She's speaking in like prophecies. She's making concoctions, you know, like, and offering them to him to like drink. She's like mysterious and interesting. I think there's a little bit of attraction there as well. I think all of that fascination is leading more into attraction as it goes on. I think he's going to end up taking her as a concubine of some sort, but he's being affected by her in like a pretty negative way. Like, he drank something she gave him, and then he seemed to like time. Wake up in the middle of a meeting and not knowing where he was.
He seems to be like suffering from lost time.
Yeah.
Right?
He had another delusion where he saw Rhaenyra performed again by the old actress, Supergirl.
Yeah.
He had another vision of Supergirl. This time he decapitated
young
her.
Rhaenyra. Yeah. He's having these nightmares or these visions, you know, so he's like being very like negatively influenced, or he's being influeed by like this place like Harrenhal. They're really playing up the idea of Harrenhal like being haunted, right? Or haunted as far as Daemon's concerned. Which is really cool because, it's an aspect, they didn't really touch upon in Game of Thrones.
They talked about it, but they never, played it up. They just kind of...
Yeah.
They made it as if, that's just, stupid people think that kind of thing,
Yeah, that's stupid people think. And, even the stuff that happened in Harrenhal and Game of Thrones, there wasn't, anything, unusual happening,
Yeah, there's just cruelty of man happening in Harrenhal, torture and stuff.
yeah, exactly. But I like here, they're really playing into the idea that it's haunted, and, that's really affecting Damon.
Mm-hmm. It's an interesting turn for him. What else do we want to talk about with this episode? I guess we talked about Lord Corlys very briefly. I think he's the hand of the queen for Rhaenyra, but we've had moments with this guy who saved his life.
Yes.
Several times this season where this guy who saved his life and him having these moments with him where he's saying I owe you a debt, and the guy's going no, you don't really have to owe me anything. And the guy's real kind of quiet and modest. And it's who is this guy? Why do we keep seeing this guy? Well, now we had a scene between him and Rhaenys. And then after that scene, she was talking to Corlys, and it kind of became clear that he's a bastard.
Yes.
Of Corlys. He's one of Corlys' bastards. He's his son. At least that's what I took from it.
No, I think you're correct there.
So now we have this kind of interesting dynamic there because she had this whole confrontation with him where she was saying, to Corlys, she was saying, I don't hold it against him. He's not at fault for, his past, for who made him. I don't hold that against him, which is the opposite of what happened with Catelyn Stark with Jon Snow, where she just treated him very poorly, even though she knew logically she shouldn't. Here you have an example of somebody in the kind of the same position, but definitely not holding it against him, but kind of holding it a little bit against Corlys as she's talking to him and, saying, why wouldn't you just tell me, and then saying he should be heralded too, that he should be honored. Well, now she's gone. And so this is something we're going to probably be seeing more of a dynamic between Corlys building up a relationship with this guy, who is presumably his son, who is directly implied to be his son.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
I guess there you have that. Don't have too much else to talk about. You know what's something we didn't talk about last week, but I think we should, is the opening scene, the intro.
You mean the theme song?
Yes. So I'm still kind of annoyed that it's still using the same theme song as Game of Thrones.
I'm not. I love it. I love it. It's great. It creates continuity. It's a great theme.
I like the theme.
It really makes it
had its own more of its own identity.
I think its identity is this is Game of Thrones. I like it. It creates continuity between the two series.
I would have wished if they had.
It's funny because I was thinking
they would have changed it a little bit, because there were different versions of the main Game of Thrones theme that aired throughout Game of Thrones, not in the intro, but there was the one part that had the whole choir, and it was what was it in season 4 where Arya took off and was leaving Westeros, on the boat, and they had a different version of that theme, but it had a choir and everything as well. Maybe if they had done that, I'd be more receptive to it. If they had taken the theme and did something different with it, But I'm kind of I'm still annoyed that they kept that, but I much prefer the visuals in season 2 than what they did in season 1 with the quilt or the crocheting or whatever that's going on and how it's telling the story. And I didn't notice it initially, so I don't know if it's with Game of Thrones where they would show new parts of the map as new things were revealed. I don't know if they're doing that. I haven't realized that yet. But there are things there's the scene where it shows an infant in bed and you see a line go across his neck.
It's showing
showing
different events.
Yeah.
So it is changing from episode to episode.
I didn't notice if that scene was in it before or not. So I didn't
I never recalled it. Yeah, I don't think it was.
I think that even if it was, the way they depicted it, you probably wouldn't have realized what was coming until afterwards.
Anyways. Oh no, yeah.
Because it's kind of a subtle illustration of it.
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to guess anything with that.
Yeah, so I think it's kind of cool. I like the way that they're showing the kind of, the all the deaths in that, I think there was a significant enough event at the end of this episode that if there are things that are changing, I should notice those next week. I'm going to make sure to pay more attention.
Okay, yeah, pay attention and report back with your findings next week.
And see if there's more put in there.
I think they are adding adding events to it as it goes on. Similar to like the way like the Game of Thrones, like the dioramas change. I think that was like every season. It was like new diorama. I don't think it was from episode to episode.
No, they did some from episode to episode. There were some in Game of Thrones where they visited a new location, and like I would watch the intro and go like, oh shit, there's like a new area, and then you'd see that area in the episode.
They do that. Yeah, that's right.
With the old House of the Dragons opening, which was kind of a play on the whole the clockwork map thing of the Game of Thrones did, but it was just King's Landing and stuff, and showing the different kind of areas of King's Landing. They did do some changes there as well, but they weren't because everything kind of took place in the same place. It wasn't like that noticeable when things happened. Like where with Game of Thrones, it was like whole new areas of the map. It was like, oh, okay, this is all right. It's showing Harrenhal. We haven't seen this place yet, you know.
To wrap this up, fantastic episode, 100%. Oh, I was gonna let you go first, but I guess I'm going first. No, amazing episode. Episode. Yeah, can't wait for next Sunday. Appointment viewing is back. What can I say?
I think I have one criticism that's very light of this episode, and that is that it's the way that Aemon's dragon ended up taking out Melee's, who is Rhaenys' dragon. It's like, how is that giant-ass dragon so stealth that it's done this twice now?
Right.
It's done two, fatal stealth attacks. Like, both times that dragon has taken somebody out, it's come, out of nowhere, completely stealthy. Like, how the hell did nobody see this fucking dragon? It's just unreal to me. Like, it made sense the first time it happened because it was about how disorienting the storm was, you know? And how that's what got in the way of it. And then that dragon seized and it killed the kid and everything. And it's like, oh, okay, yeah. It was a shock moment. But then it did it again. Now it's its thing. Like, it's just gonna be killing everybody stealthily somehow.
Right. Oh, yeah.
That would be my, one complaint. It's like, okay, this should have been a one-trick moment with that initial kill, and now you've done it twice. But in general, yeah, this episode was great, especially all the dragon warfare stuff. We've been waiting for this. We've been waiting for the Dance of the Dragons, and now we're firmly in it.
Oh, 100%.
But that is it for House of the Dragons. Next week, again, we'll be talking about both The Boys and House of the Dragons. Episode 7 of The Boys and episode 5 of House of the Dragon. So stay tuned for that and look forward to that. But until then, you can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Tyson Gifford. You can follow Will. He is at BoxOfHero. You can check out our website, thetotalscreen.com. If you go to our website and open up a container store for any of our podcast episodes and scroll down to the bottom paragraph, you'll find all of our relevant links to our SoundCloud page, our RSS feed, all that stuff. It's all there. So check that out. You can also subscribe to the podcast to your favorite podcast client of choice, like Apple Podcasts or Pocket Cast, and the entire backlog of our podcast, as well as additional content, is available on our YouTube channel, which you can find in those container stories as well. The links are there. So check all of that out. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Good night.
Night.
Thank you for listening to the OnScreen podcast, the official podcast of The Total Screen. Visit our website at thetotalscreen.com. This podcast can be found on any major podcast client, including Pocket Cast and Apple Podcast. The entire backlog of this podcast and other content can be found on our YouTube channel.